everybody, and welcome back to the Ocean Impact Podcast. My name is Amelia Helt, and I'll be one of your co-hosts for today. But as usual, I am joined by the main man, Tim Silverwood. Hey, Tim.
Hey, Amelia. Here we are again, episode 5.
Very exciting, our Pitchfest 2021 series, talking to these incredible founders. And Tim, we've got a little bit of news to share with the listeners and viewers. Do you want to maybe give us the scoop?
Sure thing, guys. Yeah, I can reveal that the Ocean Impact Pitchfest 2022 is back. We've locked in a date to officially launch the campaign on the 9th of August 2022. But sneakily, last week, we actually opened pre-registration. So you can go to our website now, and if you're a startup or entrepreneur, you can fill in your details and be the first to know when applications officially open, and all the great news about the award categories this year, the prizes. It's going to be bigger and better. We are super pumped.
Exactly. So if you guys are interested, head to the link. It's ocean-impact.org/Pitchfest 2022. And we are very proud to also announce that we've secured Zip Water and Dicker Data again as Spotlight Award sponsors. And we're so proud to have these incredible companies on board. Isn't that right, Tim?
It really is. So as part of the Pitchfest campaign, we really wanted to build a program that could shine a light on people working on specific solutions to ocean challenges. So we went to Zip Water and said, hey, you guys are coming up with solutions that can prevent the scourge of plastic water bottles impacting the ocean. How about you sponsor our Plastic Pollution Solution Spotlight Award? And they jumped on board in year 1 and have now agreed to year 2 as well. And of course, Dicker Data. These guys work in technology and making sure that everyone is connected and that data is streaming across this planet as quickly as it possibly can. And so we went to those guys and said, hey, we think people working on solutions to improve our understanding, our knowledge, our data collection from the ocean, they need a spotlight shone on them, and Dicker Data came to the rescue. So very pleased to have both of those sponsors on board again for Pitchfest 2022. And of course, we'll have many more announcements about other partners involved in the coming weeks.
It's so exciting. And, you know, what we love is having passionate and like-minded companies kind of rally around Pitchfest. And if we're speaking about passionate people, I think that's a good place for us to introduce Better Packaging Co., which is the episode for today. We have the co-founders, Rebecca Percasky and Kate Bezar. And I'll give you guys a rundown. You know, Better Packaging Co. makes sustainable and home compostable packaging for e-commerce, things like mailers, satchels, envelopes, plus much more. But the jewel in the crown at the moment is their Pollastic range. They work with communities in Southeast Asia for who coastal pollution is a pretty big issue, and they pay them a fair wage to collect ocean-bound plastic, which is then used to create these Pollastic packaging products. So it saves plastic from ending up in the ocean. It lifts people out of poverty or job uncertainty, and it offers a circular economy model for packaging. It's such exciting stuff. Tim, talk to me about when you first held one of their compostable mailers in your hands, the I'm a Dirtbag.
Yeah, so I remember might have been one of the products that my wife got shipped to our home, and you know, you're so used to seeing this abundance of plastic satchels being used in mail delivery in Australia, and I'm sure it's the case around the world. And suddenly here was this one that had this lovely rubbery soft texture, and lo and behold, I looked past the branding, which is, you know, I'm a real dirt bag, and found out it was certified home compostable. And I was like, yes, someone has finally cracked the code, because you know, I'm a real advocate of the circular economy, and a big principle there is to say, well, everything comes from the earth. So if we can get our systems right, then we can make types of packaging from the earth, from renewable resources. We can make it fully compostable. And then when we have the services and the infrastructure to either compost at home or put it back into a FOGO, a food and organics collection, then it can go back and become soil again to feed humanity. So I was so impressed when I saw their model. It's great to know that, you know, these guys are innovative packaging experts now. They started obviously out with this home compostable solution, but they have really diversified and broadened the range. They've got reusable mailers now, and their biggest and newest innovation is this one where they've said, you know what, we feel good that we're using resources that are renewable to create this home compostable packaging, but it wasn't enough for them. They really are aiming to be as effective as to protect the ocean as they possibly can, and they realize that a big solution was to go to countries where huge amounts of plastics were leaking out of the system, working with those local communities to collect that material so it doesn't end up in waterways in the ocean, and then bring it into their product supply chain. So, we've been hearing lots about ocean-bound plastic for things like fashion, and, our partners HP use it for laptop components and packaging. But to get it into this soft plastics form, I think is a really great achievement, and these guys should be extremely proud.
Yeah, it's a little bit like alchemy or something because, for anyone that's kind of ever looked into this, soft plastics is a quite a hard area to do things. And so, and the ladies jump into that in this episode. It's really fascinating, but I think that was, this kind of idea of like it's almost alchemy how they've gotten to this point because they've tackled a problem that was hard, and perhaps that's why there weren't a lot of solutions for it. And something I loved about this episode was that Kate and Beck, they did something that I think all startups should do. And it's that they genuinely started with the problem. And they did that by noticing a trend. So they realized that e-commerce was going crazy and continuously increasing. Online shopping is big business. And with, certain recent events, it's only increasing. But they realized that, as a result, there's going to be a lot more plastic waste. There had to be a better option, and they created that better option. I think for any startups listening or founders or people who have an idea, this episode, that kind of idea, and they delve into that a lot, is going to be super handy.
Yeah, it really is. And I just love them as a team. They both had successful careers. They'd done a lot. Beck had already founded a successful startup, and they just knew that they wanted to work together. So I think another big takeout for me was, a lot of people out there who are founders or have got an idea and looking to build a business. One of their biggest challenges is going to be finding the right partner. So look at the way these guys behave together, having worked so closely and so hard over the last 6 or 7 years building this company, and there's plenty of lessons to be learnt there.
There's so many gems. I'm looking forward to hearing everyone's, comments and takeaways. So, guys, leave us a review or a comment wherever you get your podcast. You can watch this on YouTube as well. Have a good one, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
I'm absolutely thrilled to have on the Ocean Impact podcast Pitchfest 2021 series. We've got Kate Bezar and Rebecca Percasky from the Better Packaging Company tuning in today from Auckland in New Zealand. Kia ora, Rebecca and Kate.
Kia ora, Tim. Hi. Hi. Thanks for having us.
Oh, thank you so much for joining and for all that you do for Planet Ocean. We were so thrilled to see your very strong application in Pitchfest 2021 and just to see the incredible impact you've had in a very short amount of time. How about we start with a bit of a dive into telling the audience what the problem is that you are solving through the Better Packaging Company?
Yeah, I think the problem that we initially set out to solve is actually different to the problem that we're now solving. Our remit certainly got broader. But let me start with where we started, and that was that we could see the huge amount of growth in e-commerce. We could see, and we realized that there was going to be a huge amount of packaging waste associated with that. Every time you order online, it will more often than not come in at least 1 or 2 layers of plastic. And so that was where we started to try and find a more sustainable way of packaging online orders than a traditional sort of virgin plastic courier satchel. So that was where we started, and we launched in 2018 with a home compostable mailing satchel. And where we've come to, and we've grown a really successful business through that, but a couple of years ago, or 18 months, we turned that on its head and said, look, rather than just trying to find a solution that does less bad, for want of a better way of saying it, let's try to find something that can actually do a whole lot of good. And that's where we're at now.
Yeah, so we're super excited that we've just recently launched Pollastic. So we're making packaging out of 100% ocean-bound plastic pollution. We're working with communities in Southeast Asia and paying them a fair wage to collect pollution off their beaches and waterways, and we're turning that into packaging. So it's got this really beautiful social side to it, because these are quite often people who don't have access to consistent work, and we're giving them a consistent stream of work. And in turn, we're also cleaning out their beautiful nature and land and things like that. And then the third part of it is that you're actually replacing something that traditionally might be using virgin plastic. So it really hits a home run on all areas, and it's really neat. And I think there's a huge shift from us, as Kate mentioned, from this idea of reducing environmental impacts to actually making products that do a whole heap of good. And it just totally turns packaging on its head, really.
But in terms of the problems that we're trying to solve, it's still about giving e-commerce sellers, online merchants, more sustainable ways to package their goods. And it's actually, our remit's a bit broader than just e-commerce now. But, we're also solving or helping to solve the ocean plastics crisis. We're alleviating poverty at the same time. And in fact, this range makes a positive impact towards 13 of the UN's Sustainable Development Goals, because we work with marginalised communities. Within those, we'll often be working with women. We're creating infrastructure in those communities that will have a lasting impact. So it's pretty special.
It's seriously special, and I can't wait to come back to touch on some of those key moments and those innovations that you've gone through throughout your still a relatively short journey, but they're so significant, each of them. But let's go a little bit into yourselves, your personal why, maybe a touch on your careers before starting Better Packaging Company. I'd love to see how we frame your journey to being where you are today.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting, and I've always been someone that believes that everything you do in your journey gets you to where you end up, and it's sort of never been more true than where we've both ended up. I really feel that everything's brought me to this moment, and Kate and I actually have really similar backgrounds in that we were both in management consulting. I was focusing on technology. I actually started as a developer and worked for really large blue chip companies like IBM and HP, and managed really large tech implementations, but had quite an entrepreneurial spirit and was quite often questioning the status quo. And so co-founded another startup, a tech startup, Starship It, which is quite big in Australia, and it's sort of in New Zealand, and it sits between e-commerce merchants and courier companies. And we were looking at packaging in that startup, and I sort of, hand on my heart, couldn't really be associated with bringing any more plastic into the world, because I'd always been passionately anti-packaging, and we sort of joke, both of us can't believe we own a packaging company because it's something we both love to hate. And then at the same time, my daughter, I've got 3 children, and I think when you have children, you really start to think about what you are doing to this planet and what you're leaving behind. And my little daughter was about 6, and she chose to do her school project on what she called saving the world. And she did this recording in her cute little baby voice and came up with all these ideas of how she could save the world. And it just got me right here. I mean, it actually still makes me a bit emotional thinking about it. And I just knew I had to act. And so I wrote up a list of 5 ideas and 4 in the packaging space. And one was to make a sustainable courier satchel. But I had worked with Kate in the other startup, and we just had such an amazing working relationship that as soon as I had this idea, I reached out to her and said, look, I'd love to do this with you because we have such a similar value set. The rest was history.
Yeah. So I came to this, it's sort of actually similar kind of way as Beck said. So I'd been a management consultant straight out of university, and I did that for 5 or 6 years before finally admitting that while I learned a huge amount, it wasn't where I was going to be for life. I certainly didn't want to be a partner in a management consulting firm. And, I really did feel like I checked a lot of my values at the door, and I went to work every day. And not only that, but I had this whole other side of me, this, my far more creative side that I wasn't using. I would work sort of 70, 80-hour weeks, and then volunteer at art galleries on the weekend to get my fix of what I loved. So I left consulting, and this is a story for another time, and there's probably other podcasts you can find, but I founded a magazine called Dumbo Feather in Australia, and that was my way of exploring what I loved, which was words and imagery and messaging, and creating something that I felt was going to encourage people to explore and be more confident in exploring what they truly wanted to do with their lives, and to try to find work that was values aligned. And I did that by telling the stories of winemakers, filmmakers, entrepreneurs, all sorts of really fascinating individuals who were doing that. But when I decided to make a magazine, I was really cognizant of the fact that I was going to be creating something and using the world's resources, and I wanted to do that in the most responsible way possible. So the magazine was printed on 100% recycled paper stock. It was the first time anyone had ever done that in the world. It cost me a fortune, but it was just non-negotiable. Soy-based inks. I refused to put it in a plastic sleeve to send to subscribers. So, I'd have these working bees where we'd stuff the magazine into to paper, 100% recycled paper envelopes. So, I would never pulp the unsold issues. I'd always have to pay to collect them back and resell them. So I actually sort of created quite a circular model for the magazine without even knowing what circular economy was at the stage. And I did eventually, after 7 years, I sold the magazine to a fantastic crew called Small Giants, and they are still publishing it today. But what I learned out of that was what I loved was building values-based brands, or a values-based brand. And I knew how strongly that had resonated with Dumbo Feathers readers and subscribers, and I'd found an extraordinary audience through doing that. And so when Beck approached me with this kooky idea to create a more sustainable courier satchel, I could immediately see the opportunity, but B, I could see that I could add value in that process. And I could see that, because we both believed in it so strongly and that mission, that would be a compelling proposition. And so that's what we've done. Yeah, long story short.
Oh, thank you. No, that's such great stuff, because I think a lot of the people listening out there, they can see you and they can see the success that you have now, but obviously our history is so imperative in that journey to take us to where we are now. So let's go back then. When are we talking, Rebecca, when you started to have the idea and then you actually went out to find out how on earth you can make a more sustainable packaging solution? Can you tell us a little bit about the technical side of it, what was on the market existing and what you chose to focus on initially?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I was talking about this with someone yesterday. I think we came at the problem really uniquely in that neither of us had any experience with creating packaging in the past. And I think that opened up a lot of opportunity to us, because we weren't bogged down by what should be done or how it should be done or anything like that. And I think when you come at a problem from a different angle, quite often you'll have a different answer. And I think that's something that we're really trying to hold on to with our product development going forward, is keeping a really open mindset, and anything's on the table and anything's possible. And so that's how we really approached this, as we knew what we didn't want, and we set out to find something that was more sustainable. We went on a journey, and we actually stepped away from it. There was a point there, it was sort of about 18 months of R&D. There was a point there where a couple of months, it was like, this isn't going to be possible. There's actually nothing in the marketplace that is going to be able to replace what we currently have. And we had quite a few false starts. So we just literally scoured the world looking for different materials. And what we did find was people were using a home compostable material for bin liners and dog poo bags, actually. And we went, well, imagine if we could take that and turn that into a courier satchel. But we didn't realise a courier satchel is actually quite complex. You need to be able to stick a label to it. The seams need to be really tough so that they don't split in transit. It needs, you need to be able to sell it and things like that. And so there was a bit of R&D there with that material. So we took a material that was being used for something else and tried to get it used for this application. And so there was a little bit of R&D that happened there. And then when we launched it, as you know, back in 2018, we literally put an advert up on a Google ad, and within minutes we had a first inquiry, and they just kept on coming, and the orders, we just kept running out of stock because people were just so ready for sustainable options. And what we'd shown is that if you make it easy for brands, they will choose those options. So it was really exciting to get that feedback. And I think I know I did. I went into the business quite concerned about the state of the environment. But after we've had all that incredible feedback from customers and everyone wanting to make changes, it's given me a lot more hope.
It's probably also worth mentioning that we did take the Ellen MacArthur Foundation framework and apply that to every choice we were looking at, all those options. And this was in 2017, 2018. And soft plastics recycling was very much in its infancy. We spoke to Red Cycle. They believed they were at that time recycling less than 0.1% of the entire soft plastics within Australia. Sorry, that's my dog. So we just thought, that rules out that as an option. So when we found a material that was certified home compostable, that people could dispose of in their own backyards, and then our subsequent research suggested that almost 30% of people would have access to a home compost. The appeal was immediate. That was seemed to be a fantastic solution.
We were very careful with our messaging, and we still are, to let everybody know that we didn't have all the answers. And we've been very upfront about this journey that we're on, and bringing products that are the best option at that point in time, with the knowledge that they're going to continually evolve. And we want to take our customers on that journey with us, and ourselves. We're going on the journey as well. And
the world's on a journey, isn't it?
And it's moving so fast. This industry is just moving incredibly fast, and it's super exciting. And I think that's one of the key takeaway. Well, the key takeaways for us is that we make sure we keep our minds and open to what other opportunities are out there, and what we have now will be very different to what we have in a couple of years' time.
I loved hearing or reading about you taking it to market. You mentioned the Google ad before that got this great response, but also perhaps that your initial vision was to try and get to the big users of satchels and disrupt that market, but you actually found that it was smaller retailers and e-commerce stores that became your greatest advocates. And I still remember when I first touched one of your products and saw the fantastic branding, I'm a real dirtbag. And I'm a circular economy advocate, and just thought, finally, here we have someone out there disrupting it. So I would have become a mouthpiece like that. So tell us a little bit about that realization that it wasn't about going straight to the top. It was actually about building this unique tribe at the base level.
Big Kid, through her work with Starship It, she had heaps of contacts with courier companies and the like throughout Australia and New Zealand. And so that was what we thought we were going to leverage initially to get this product to market. I don't think we realised sort of how, there's a reason those companies go slowly. And there's not as much willingness to take risks, and that's because the stakes are that much higher. But, of course, all of them said to us, is it proven? Does it work? Are people, is this the right thing? And we said, yes, absolutely, believe us. And they're like, oh, well, we'd need more than just believe us or trust us. So that was when we said, well, let's, instead of trying to sell 1 million bags to Australia Post, let's do our own production run. We'll brand them ourselves, and that's when we came up with I'm a Real Dirtbag, and we decided to make them matte black with funky messaging, very direct messaging, but we knew we needed to cut through, and it had to be obvious that this was different to plastic and should be treated differently. And it felt like a big deal to us. We were going to be printing tens of thousands of these things, but we did that production run. We put it for sale on our website. It sold out in 2 weeks. We doubled it. It sold out in 2 weeks, and we have literally been running ever since.
Yeah, I think we should also add at that time when we talk about that Google AdWord, we had all of these small to medium brands getting in touch with us, wanting this product. And as we said, we had this plan to be selling millions of them. And a part of our mission was to make the product accessible and affordable to brands of all sizes. And the MOQ back then was sort of 10,000 units. And because there's a shelf life of a year, there was just no way any of those small brands would be able to have access to that product. And I can remember it to this day. I know exactly where I was standing. We were on the phone to each other, and we were like, "Oh, we'll set up an e-commerce site and we'll sell it via our e-commerce site," because it was the right thing to do, and we really believed in supporting everybody. And we were going to actually fulfill it out of my garage because we thought it was going to be a real side hustle. And I think it wasn't. It became one of the fastest growing sides of our business. And as you mentioned, that's how we got it into the hands of so many different people. And we started to have those big brands approach us because they'd receive a bikini in one of our bags. And I think it's so important to stick to your values and listen to your customers and sort of follow that energy and that journey. And by doing that and being true to that, it actually became a really important part of our business. Absolutely. And got those dirt bags into the hands of millions and millions of people all around the world. So it was really cool, really neat. And we love those brands. It's just such a treat to get to deal with them on a day-to-day basis.
For this next bit of questioning, maybe you can bundle together the growth and diversification of your product lines and your expansion overseas. I'm not too sure if those two go well together or not, but I'd love to touch on both of those unique growth periods in the business, if you wouldn't mind.
So from day one, we, again, wanted to make our products accessible to businesses of all sizes, but anywhere. It was really important to us that anyone who wanted this packaging was able to get it. So we made it available online to everyone anywhere. And when we'd get an order from, I don't know, somewhere remote in South America, we'd be like, okay, let's figure out how to get it there. And then what we'd see was where the pockets of demand were, and very quickly we saw that there was a huge uptake in Australia. So that was the first place we got a 3PL, third-party logistics provider, to warehouse and distribute our packaging there. And that's really how we've grown since. So we'd wait to build up demand in a market, and then when there was enough demand there, we would then set up fulfillment within that market. And we now have 6 warehousing distribution locations around the world that do mean that we can service with a reasonably low carbon footprint because we're not shipping from New Zealand, all those markets around the world. So that's kind of how we expanded globally.
And when we would go in to a market, as Kate said, it would be driven by demand, but quite often by an anchor larger customer. So in the US, we actually set up there much earlier than we originally expected because we had a really large customer who could support the demand and the shipping. And I think Kate was really big on this in the early days, which has been amazing, which was to outsource as much of our business operations as possible, because it meant that we could keep a really small team here in New Zealand. And it also kept our footprint really low. And by leveraging the technology, software as a service, but also third-party logistics providers, we didn't have to spend a whole lot of money going into new markets. So we could really test the water. But we definitely created a logistical one that we're still working through. But it was a really neat way to get into those markets and keep the cost low. So I do recommend that for brands wanting to test the water in different markets.
And in terms of product expansion, what did we do first after mailing satchels? Was it labels?
The garment bags.
So garment bags.
The clear garment bags. The labels took close to 2 years to develop. They were the ever elusive labels.
And then was it bubble bags? I mean, we really just listened to our customers. Where were their other pain points? Where else were they looking for packaging? What else did they need? And have developed it ever since. So clear garment bags came off the rank. Labels, tape, padded mailers,
pallet wrap
we delved into.
Yeah. But then, as I mentioned earlier, we're constantly looking for that next. What is the next thing in sustainable packaging? And we still felt that while we were reducing the impacts, there was more that we could do. And so about 2 years ago, we had this session where we just threw all of our preconceived ideas out the door and came into it with a really open mind and said, look, if we had all the money in the world and technology, there was any technology available, what would packaging be made of? And we wrote up a whole lot of different ideas and brainstormed it and keep coming back to that circular economy model and what they recommend. And where we landed on was that there's so many materials in use at the moment as pollution that we should be harvesting that mist, all of that pollution, and creating packaging out of it and using a resource that's already in nature. Rather than digging up and chopping down more trees. And so we got fixated on this idea of creating a range of packaging out of pollution. And that's where the idea for Pollastic came from, and also our other products that we've got in R&D at the moment. So in the future, all of our products will be made out of pollution sources.
So this idea that you're actually cleaning up the planet instead of making it more of a mess. Is certainly what spins our wheels and where we see the future of packaging. We want to make it to the point where there is no excuse. No one should be, as Beck said, chopping down trees, pulling oil out of the ground. There is enough that's already been made. It just needs to be recycled properly.
It doesn't just apply to packaging. It could be every product in the world. I mean, when you think of textiles and everything else, we always say I have this vision of landfills being dug up because the resources in the landfill have a value, and until we put a value on waste, we won't respect it. And that's what we're really trying to do, is put a value on it so that people look after it and keep it in loop.
So how hard was it? Obviously, we've been seeing ocean-bound plastic and many different sort of brands maybe looking down products like PET or some of the other hard plastics, but how does the process work when it comes to soft plastics, and what material are they targeting in these communities? And the final piece of that question would be around, what's the call to action for the customers once they're done with the product? Now, does it go back into the soft plastics recycling system?
Yeah, look, I'll talk a little bit to the difficulties, and it goes back to our naivety of when we started this company. We didn't have any packaging experience, and perhaps if we did, we wouldn't have chosen flexible films, so like courier satchels and the like, because they are the hardest product to work with if you're using recycled materials, because there's so many imperfections, and because they're so thin, those imperfections really show up in the form of holes in the bag. So there's been a lot of R&D in the last 2 years to get this product off the ground and to get it to a really usable state. Like the first time we ran it, it was just a big gooey lump. And so it has been incredibly complex. And we are using a source of pollution that no one really wants to touch. It's all flexible films, it's shopping bags and say food packaging wrappers, the kind of things that, it's much easier to pick up a whole water bottle off a beach and recycle it than the materials we're looking at. And so we've really had to create another whole sort of collection stream to do that. But that's what we love about it as well, because we're taking some of the nastiest plastic in the world and getting it back into loop. And then the end of life options are soft plastics recycling, and there's a lot of innovation happening in that space as well. Like, it's just come such a long way, even in the 4 years we've been in the industry.
I'd just say on the end of life thing though, while it's important, this is pollution. This is plastic that was sitting on a beach about to end up on a coral reef. We've taken it from there, made it into something that people use and that people will generally receive in their homes. So most plastic pollution is from convenience food or stuff that's consumed on the go, and often in third world countries. well, in those parts of the world. We're taking that and actually taking it into an environment where soft plastics recycling is an option, but even if it now ends up in landfill, that's a hell of a lot better place than where it was in the first place, right? So end of life is certainly important, but it's only a small part of the picture for why this product's, so important and is so neat.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, let's go a little bit further. Now, obviously, designing these new products and the Pollastic range must be one of your key achievements, but let's have a little bit more of a dive into some of those key achievements through this journey. And on the backside of that, we might start to talk about some of the challenges that you face, which is sometimes more than the achievements.
Yeah, look, we faced enough. I'll start with the challenges because we've faced so many, and we face them every day. I think of business as just a constant problem solving. How are you going to get from A to B? How are you going to look after a customer who's not happy? Or, there's just so many different ways and different challenges. Supply chain over the last 4 years has just been just insane. And we've actually created a whole new supply chain within all of these supply chain challenges that we've faced. But I think one of the things that we learned quite early on was to really lean in to the challenges and the mistakes and the challenges from people as well, because you get challenged daily by brands and competitors. And so we've really taken that in and try to learn and grow from it. So if we are making mistakes, which we make a heck of a lot of, especially me, we go, right, while we're in that mistake, how are we going to learn from this and what can we do to make our business better? And one of the ones that I sort of think of, and we've only just been able to start talking about now because it was such a terrible time, was what we call Stocktober. And we realised sort of going into Christmas a couple of years ago that for various reasons, a lot of our stock wasn't usable. And that was caused by the processes that we didn't have in place that were proper. And at that time, we actually thought the business might not get through it. But what we held on to, and we had a session right at the beginning of that, of how will we never be in this situation again? And we wrote up some areas and things that we would need to do once we got through that time of how we'd never be there again. And I just remember thinking at the time, thank goodness we're going through this now when we're this size and not when we're 3 or 4 times as big. And so we held on to those learnings during that time. And I think it really helped the team and us get through it together, because we knew that we would never get ourselves into those situations again. But yeah, we've made a lot of mistakes.
Yeah, we've made products that weren't our core range and we thought that we'd be able to find a whole new market for, but without the resources to do that, it was impossible. We've had QA issues in the past, but we now have an extraordinarily thorough QA process that I love.
And we've messaged, we got the messaging wrong. In the early days, we messaged some of our bubble bags, had the wrong messaging on them. And we've really learned from that. We trusted at face value sometimes some of the suppliers we were working on, and it wasn't until we did a trip to China that we really unraveled a lot of that. And we see a lot of that still happening in the industry with some of our competitors.
We've seen, I think I wouldn't say it's a mistake, but a key learning was, we were the first in the world to commercialise a home compostable courier satchel, really. But we had no IP in that process. And so we've been copied ad nauseum. And, now if you Google it, there's probably, 30 potentially, smaller players out there who, and that's fine. In a way, it's been really neat to be at the forefront of that wave. But from a business perspective, it's actually been quite tough, quite difficult to watch that happen. So we've certainly made greater strides in protecting some of the intelligence that we've gathered and how to make our products going forward. And that's not to say that we're not going to share it, but we're going to share it with and when we feel is a responsible way to do that, and with players who we feel are going to treat that knowledge correctly and properly and responsibly, if that makes sense. Yeah.
But we're learning every day.
Let's go straight into that then. I mean, that's obviously one very, very important key learning there that you shared, Kate. But any other sort of significant key learnings that you think are really valuable for other founders out there listening to this podcast today?
Yeah, I think around your team and your hiring. So it's been an area that the two of us, because it was the two of us for so long, and so then when you go and you start to bring people into that fold, we've really changed our recruitment process and been super thorough about it now, and have we get quite a few members of our team involved in it, and do sort of 4 interviews. We have a values fit interview as well, is really important. That's actually the first interview that we do, what I call sort of a values alignment interview. And so we've learned a lot from the recruitment process and trying to onboard people and making sure that it is a values fit as well as a work ethic fit, because a startup culture is brutal at times. I think that's been a really big learning for us, because it's not either Kate or my sweet spot. It's sort of hiring and managing people, and so we've learned a lot in that space as well. And team is so important. Like it's everything as you grow, and we've got the most amazing team because of that, all of that learning.
Anything else for you, Kate?
I think we've also, not necessarily through mistakes, but over time we've realised how important the networks are that we've built and how to lean into those, and that as time consuming as it can be to be part of all sorts of different bodies, and we're signatories to a number of packaging pacts. We are part of an ecosystem here called New Zealand. It's run by New Zealand Trade and Enterprise that's been extraordinarily supportive. We're part of the Cardia Women's Initiative. We're part of SheEO. Unreasonable, the Elemental Accelerator. And while they are time consuming and resource intensive, you get out what you put in. And so we've really tried to leverage those networks both ways. So it's not, Bex has actually been amazing at putting in so much to those networks that what we get out is returned, three or fourfold.
And I think it was really important to us, because what we're doing is so important from an impact. It's not just business, it's impact first. And so we have that mentality of we can't do it alone, and we don't have to do it alone. So let's bring everyone into the fold and into the community, and we can all do it together. And it's a very different approach for this business that we're taking than we did at our previous business, because it's a completely different mentality of what we're trying to achieve.
And I think because we do have a greater mission than just profit making, it is very easy for other people and networks to lean into what we're doing and to want to support us in that mission. And especially when you find people and organisations with the same kind of values as and your organisation's a fantastic example of that. People want to support and help us because what we're doing has this higher, greater purpose. Beck and I, the last thing on our minds is lining our own pockets. We genuinely want to leave the world a better place for our kids, and make as much impact as we can.
How important in that purpose piece and impact piece are those certification opportunities, around B Corp, around carbon, around compostability? I mean, it's one thing to be and to embody that purpose and that impact, but how would you say the certification piece fits into that integrity piece?
Well, I think you just nailed it there. It's about integrity, and I think it's becoming more and more difficult to cut through what we'd call greenwashing with genuine messages. And when those messages and claims, let's call them, sort of what they are backed up by science and rigorous science and certifications, then that's the only way that we want to operate, and it's the way our customers demand us to operate. particularly at the more sort of multinational corporate level, I'd say. So when you're dealing with companies who have sustainability teams and ESG goals and have made commitments to their shareholders and investors and are also signatories to the same packaging pacts that we are, they need their claims to be backed up by science and certifications as well. So it's almost a no-brainer.
Consumers have a choice and they vote every day with their wallets. And why wouldn't you choose companies that have all the certifications and are B Corp certified? There's so many options out there. It makes sense. But we wouldn't sell a product that wasn't certified or backed up or tested. And then with regards to the B Corp, we really use that framework as a way to build the business from the ground up. We were using the B Corp framework way before we even got certified, and we use it as a framework of the right way to operate, and it's incredibly powerful. We love it, and I think the fact that we've done it from the beginning has also made it a lot easier, because it's so much easier to start with how you intend to go on rather than trying to retrofit it.
I think also we were quite conscious that we were at the forefront of this industry, and as a leader, as one of the first to do it, we wanted to set the bar as high as we could, so that everyone who was going to follow or come behind also had to do it in preferably as ethical and a way as we were. So I'd like to think that we're doing that. We're trying to lead as much by example as possible.
Your trailblazing and pioneering is very welcome. Last couple of questions. Maybe just tell the listeners what's on the plan ahead for the next sort of 12 to 24 months for Better Packaging Company.
Yeah, so look, we're just raising a Series A round, and we're going to use those funds to really push into the American market as well as solidify our presence in the Australian market, and to really develop our Pollastic. So there's so many uses for that product, from air pillows, bubble mailers, so that we'll be doing a lot of R&D with that. So you'll start to see a lot more innovation. We're also working on a fibre-based range, which will be made out of a waste/pollution source as well. So that's super exciting. We're looking at tree-free. I have to say that?
Yeah.
Tree-free.
So cardboard and paper alternatives.
Yeah, which we've actually got some of them sitting on our desk, which are quite neat. Just really expanding the ranges that we have, and we sort of see those three ranges sitting side by side. So the fibre, the compostable, and the recycled, and just making that full end-to-end supply chain as sustainable as possible for brands. But we really really believe in a world where there's no more virgin materials being used, that we're using everything that's in loop. So we're going to be working our hardest to make that happen, and hopefully putting pressure on other packaging companies to do the same.
I'm sure you will be, and you already are. All right, we're getting very close to wrapping it up then. Any things that you wanted to speak about today that you haven't had the chance to speak about yet? And as you can wrap that up as to sort of telling people where they can follow the journey and support you through, it'd be great.
We've covered quite a bit.
I think we have. I think we have, Tim. Thank you for asking such pertinent questions. If people do want to follow the journey, then our website is betterpackaging.com. And we regularly post blogs on there. Also, of course, social media at Better Packaging Co. You'll get a bit more of an insight, a bit more of a, I guess, off-the-record type insight into what happens, as well as any new products and iterations that we bring out. Sign up to our e-newsletter. There's a box on the site. We love hearing from anyone and everyone with their ideas, their pain points, what they want more of, what they want less of. So, drop us a line at any time.
Well, thank you both so much for your incredible work, and thank you for sharing your story here on the Ocean Impact podcast today.
Amazing.
Thanks,
Thank you
Jim.
for having us.